everybody, what's up? Thanks for checking out the video and welcome to Keeping It Real Fishing. Got a new braid that I'd like to show you here, at least new as of the making of this video. This is the Daiwa J-Braid. It's pretty exciting, at least as far as braids and lines go. The main thing here, guys, is the price point that it's coming in at. There's another line that I'm going to be rolling in throughout the course of this video, and that is the Daiwa Samurai Braid. Some of you may be familiar with it. It is a high-end braid. It's not inexpensive at all, but a lot of people swear by it, and this right here seemingly is almost the same thing, but coming in at less than half the price. So there's going to be two parts within this same video, guys. We're going to take a look at it quickly here at the tabletop and ascertain what we can from a tabletop look at line. But what we can see is, first of all, the color before having fished it. Right, I just received this. It hasn't been spooled up or anything yet, obviously. Let's take a look at the color, because all braids fade. Right, that color is not actually impregnated into those spectra or Dyneema fibers. They just can't hold it. So manufacturers either they encapsulate it sometimes in these plastic-like coatings. Power Pro is a good example of that, the Power Pro Slick series. Or it's almost this kind of like, I don't know, dipped in it, so to speak. And that's what the Daiwa is. It's not a coating. It's always been known to be a very limp line, but the coating on this one, as well as any other one, will fade. So let's take a look at the color. Let's also take a look at its attributes. Let's see exactly how limp it is or how stiff it is. And just see what we can see here on the tabletop before we take it out. And then the second part of the video, guys, will be a few weeks later. Of course, you'll roll right into it within this video. But I'm going to fish it for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 weeks and just report back to you with what my observations are. If there's any glaring problems with it, or if it's a quality braid at a very reasonable price. So let's take a closer look. Alright, guys, so one of the first things that we notice about the Daiwa J-Braid, calling your attention here on the package, is twofold. One, they're making a big deal out of the fact that it's an 8 carrier. They really want you to come away with that. And the other thing, look at how big it is, made in Japan. You know, a lot of people out there feel, in terms of fishing equipment, that some of our higher end stuff, whether it's rods, reels, lures, or line, comes from Japan. That there's a level of, I don't know, craftsmanship or integrity of design, whatever you want to call it, and that some of our higher end stuff comes out of Japan. In terms of some high-end reels and rods, I can definitely say that's the case. Some of the finest Shimanos and Daiwas are reserved for over in Japan. But does that hold true with lines? Or is line, you know, simple enough such that it doesn't really matter where you make it? You know, line is line. Well, guys, I'm not saying that this is an asset or a detriment, because for every person that says, wow, that's made in Japan and it's economically priced, that seems like a go to me. There are plenty of people out there that prefer a product that's made here in the United States, and I understand, you know, both sides of that. But it's definitely what they want you to come away with. They have the feeling that you're going to see that Japan label and think that this is a very high quality product, and at this price, a good deal as well. Let's take a look at the line, and let's soak in that color. A pretty deep green, kind of a mossy green color. For comparative purposes, and I'm going to be rolling in their previous, or not previous, but concurrently they are still selling the Samurai Braid, and so just for color purposes I want to roll this in right now. So there's Samurai on the right, and you can see how much darker the pigment is on a new Samurai Braid versus new J-Braid. Right, very dark. Now, again, all braids are going to lose their color and or that coating as time goes on. It's just the nature of the braid. But what I have found with the Samurai Braid is, because they start so dark, when this has lost a couple shades, it's darker than my other braids. I could almost kind of speculate that this one is about that color after, you know, after your season's half over, something like that. That once worn, the Samurai Braid is this color, so which makes me think that this, as it wears, will be, you know, a much lighter shade of this, maybe even almost like a yellowish green. How big of a deal is color in braid? Like anything of fishing, guys, people have mixed opinions and strong opinions. Some people feel that they want to, what is the technique? That they'll color in like the working end of their line, like the last 12 or 16 inches or so, and they'll go over it with a permanent marker. I guess the idea there being that dark braid is not offensive to a fish versus a braid that's lost its color and is light for some reason would bother a fish. I don't know. I guess so. I mean, we can't ask the fish. You know, to me, I've never really been big on the bandwagon of braid being detrimental to getting a bite, regardless of the color of the braid. The reason being, guys, is because you have weeds. You have all sorts of thin, wispy, grass-like weeds in the water. And some of those weeds can be lightly colored, and some of them can be darkly colored. And I just don't see bass as looking at one little single strand of braid and that cueing them off, regardless of its color. I understand a lot of you guys may disagree, and I have been known to color in the last segment myself. But does it really make a difference? Like so many things, guys, it's hard to really know. The reason I mention all that, though, guys, is just because this starts off, as we saw compared to the Samurai, a little bit lighter, and you know it's going to get light as time goes on. So regardless of where you fall on that fence, whether color makes a difference to you or not, if you choose to color it, you can. Otherwise, you'll be fishing with a lighter braid. In super clear water, gin clear water situations, you would tie on a leader. You know, no big deal. Tie on a fluorocarbon leader, and so you still have that responsiveness of the braid going to the leader. Let's take a look at the attributes, the physical attributes of the line. Now here's where it all comes together, guys. When I feel this line in hand, and I'm pretty experienced with the Samurai braid. I have 40-pound Samurai on a number of my reels. I've been using it for a number of years. And this one here is a recent pickup this year. This is 80-pound, which I've been using on my swim bait reel, my large swim bait reel. But this 50-pound that I have here feels pretty much the same. I can't tell the difference running it through my fingers between this and the feel of my 40-pound Samurai braid. And you gotta say, is there anything more to it than that? I can't imagine it's going to, quote, fish any differently on the water. So if this is just as smooth in hand, and it seemingly is just as limp, you see how this just kind of drapes, guys? It just kind of goes over the finger, and like if you put like a kink in it, it just goes away. That's always been the hallmark of the Samurai braid. Very, very soft, very supple line. In contrast to, I'll roll in another one here. I'm actually going to do a quick review on this as well right after this. You can see that video. This, by the way, is the new Trilene Professional. This limpness and subtleness is in contrast to a coated line. Even as I handle it, you can see it has a mind of its own. It's very stiff, and like if you bend it, those bends stay. We can kind of create mountains here, or a sine wave or something. You know, those are just there. They're not going anywhere. You could like bend this to the sky, and you know it'll bend up. So I'm not saying that this is necessarily a bad thing, but there's two different philosophies in the line here. A coated line, which has a fully encapsulated layer of some kind of plasticky type material on the outside, versus an uncoated line. These are going to be very soft, very supple, they're going to flow, versus these which have a stiffness to them. I've used both. They both cast great. They both run quiet through your guides. The only difference is that you kind of have almost two lines in one here. Sooner or later this coating will come off. And when it does so, actually, it'll behave more like the J-Braid does right now when it's new. It'll be softer, it'll be more supple, but it'll also be a lot lighter because this is a very, very dark color. You can see how dark that is, but that dark is only there as long as that coating is there. Whereas the J-Braid has no coating to wear off. So the color will fade a little bit, but not as drastically as with this. All right. So guys, I think that's pretty much it. I'm pretty excited. This looks to me to be a really, really nice braid. The last thing I'll mention, guys, talking about the carriers, smooth braid is good, but for those of you out there who do a lot of kind of junk fishing, if you do punching or if you do a lot of flipping and pitching, you will know, and I know some people even prefer the older 4-carrier braids because they cut through vegetation a lot more readily. All braids, because of the fact that they don't stretch, want to cut things. And if you've ever torqued this down, you know, in your fingers when you're tying a knot, you know that it wants to cut you, and it will if you pull it hard enough. But these smooth ones don't do it as readily as the older style braids, where you could really feel the braid in the line. When you run your finger over it, you could feel like all those little knots in there. Those cut through vegetation like a knife. When you're using a heavy power rod and you're really, say you're wrapped around a lily pad stalk and you whip on it, it slices right through faster than these will. Alright, so there is actually a pro and a con. These are nice and quiet coming through your guides and casting. People will say that the smooth ones cast a little bit further. I don't really think that's the case. But in terms of in the water, those rough ones are almost a tool in terms of cutting through things, whereas these will cut but not as readily. So if you do a lot of that kind of fishing, that's something to consider. Alright guys, so let's take it out on the water now. A few weeks is going to transpire, and then I'm going to come right back to you in just a second and let you know what's been going on with this braid, and if it's what it looks to be, which is a great value in braid from Daiwa. I'll be right back. Hey guys, what's going on? So we're out here on the water with the Daiwa J-Braid, and I've had it on my Daiwa Zillion here, and I've been using it for actually about 10 weeks. Been testing it quite extensively, and so here's what I found. You get a decent amount of bleed out right in the beginning, and I mean right in the beginning. The first day you put it on, actually your reel, as the water gets absorbed by the line and as you're reeling it in, you know how your hand gets a little wet, the water that pools on your reel, you're going to see is green. It almost looks like, if you guys remember like Ecto Cooler, like that lime green, it's exactly what it looks like, this kind of chartreuse lime green. Anyway, the dye is bleeding out of the line, and that happens immediately, like your first day. And that happens, I'd say, through your first couple trips. And at some point, that working portion of the line that you keep casting out each time, it's lost all the kind of the ink that it's going to lose, and it kind of settles into the color that it's going to be. I'm going to grab this camera here to give you guys a better look. Alright guys, so there you can see there's actually not a huge difference in color. The one that's on the reel is just a hair lighter than the one that's come off of the original spool. This, of course, here on the spool is unused. And yeah, it hasn't lost a lot. So it starts out as a relatively light, kind of like that light moss color. You see a lot of it bleed out, but in terms of the end color, or not the end color, but again, this is after about 10 weeks of testing, you haven't actually lost that much in terms of the hue. So that's not too bad, at least in terms of color retention. Now guys, color is something that people talk about a lot, but in my book, honestly, it doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. The reason being, and I think I alluded to this in the previous part of the video, is the very last working portion of your line, that last 18 to 24 inches, you could always color in with a permanent marker. You could use black, or like go to a hobby store and get like a dark green if you just want to match what it originally was. But you know, that's the thing, you can take care of that last portion of the line if you're of the persuasion that a dark line in the water is somehow less unsettling than a light line. I don't know, I mean, to me, at the end of the day, it probably looks like a weed, some kind of weed in the water, and there's certainly weeds that are light in color and weeds that are dark in color. I think people get really hung up on it, but I wouldn't say that the fish, you know, I've caught so many fish on lures that I'm tying straight braid to, even finesse things like Senkos and stuff like that, in really, really clear water situations, gin clear water situations. I don't think you have a problem either, because at that point you are going to use a leader. You are going to tie on that fluorocarbon leader or copolymer, a mono, whatever you're going to use. You're going to transition from that braid into some kind of plastic type line that's more translucent in the water. So the fact that the line loses color, I don't think is so big of a deal. You can take care of that on either end. What is important, guys, and this is one thing that I found out with the J-Braid, and also I'm a fan of Samurai Braid, Daiwa's other one, and this is not such good news. Now, I'm someone who looks for a big sample size. I'm not looking for something that happened once or twice, and I'm not going to condemn it or praise it. I look for something that happened repeatedly, all right? I'm kind of data driven. And so what I could tell you now, unfortunately, is over the years I have had more breakoffs mid-cast on Daiwa line, the J-Braid. Now I've lost 4 lures on that this season. And what I mean is, you know, when you're casting and just like a half second into the cast you get that kind of backlash that just stops at your reel. It's not a backlash like a bird's nest, it doesn't back up like that, but just there's a knot and just the whole thing just stops abruptly and your lure just goes sailing. All right, that's you never want to see that happen, but particularly I'm fishing these swim baits this year. I lost a couple pretty expensive swim baits doing that. I have noticed now with consistency that that happens on Daiwa lines. It's not that they're not strong. I hypothesize that the same thing that makes them very nice in some ways, they're very, very smooth. They're very kind of soft and supple, limber. They go perfectly quiet through your guides. Those are nice attributes as opposed to the ones that come through the guides and they're noisy and stuff like that. That really soft and kind of supple form, I've noticed, it just kind of, every once in a while, not often, but every once in a while, it creates a knot. Something just doesn't lay right, it gets hung up, and it creates a knot on my reel. And every so often, I cast that knot, just stops short, and that lure goes sailing. I'm doing another review right now of the Berkley Professional Braid. And I only mention that, guys, these videos are going to come up kind of simultaneously, but I reviewed each one separate. And I have not gotten a single Breakoff on that all year, and I'm actually running that now on 2 reels. And then looking back on my Power Pros, on the Suffix 832, lines that have that coating, lines that, you know, when you pick them up, they might seem a little stiff, they have that kind of waxy coating on them. Sometimes they make a little bit noise, they may not seem as manageable or whatever, but the end result in my experience is that I have been much, much less likely. I've only had a handful of breakoffs ever on those type of lines, and on these Daiwas it's semi-consistent. Like, I'm going to get a decent number of them throughout the year. So that's the bad news. Again, it's not the Daiwa J-Braid specifically. I think it just has to do with making a line in that way, making it very, very soft and limber and everything else. And it's just more likely to sometimes bunch up in the wrong way, as opposed to the lines that are a little bit stiffer. They're just less likely to take on an errant form or to form some little loop or something on your reel and to give you that problem. So that's pretty much it, guys. Aside from that, I mean, it's braid, it's strong, haven't had any problems with breakoff setting the hook or snags. You know, I was pulling logs and everything halfway out of the water. That's pretty much it, guys. Color retention is good, but it starts off light and it kind of stays light. You are going to get that bleeding off onto your reel. Alright, you actually have to clean it off. I was using fishing gloves, like those sun gloves, and my gloves are like stained green, so it does come off very rapidly. And unfortunately, in my book, I can't recommend it just because I've seen too many lures go sailing on the J-Braid and before it on the Samurai Braid. I know a lot of guys out there love it. It was my line of choice for a while. I actually have another video, my basics of braid, where I said it was my favorite. And I just hadn't snapped off that many on it on that point. I hadn't been using it that long. But now, having really used it more, as well as some other brands, I've moved away from it. I actually had Daiwa Samurai Braid on my biggest swim bait reel. I just don't trust it. I took it off for actually the Berkley Trilene Professional Braid. I'm really, really liking that braid. And like I said, I'm going to have another review up probably in the same day as this one, going into detail on that Berkley Trilene Professional Braid. So, alright guys, that's it. A lot of info on that one particular kind of braid, but also just some kind of generalities on stiff braid and softer braids in general. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks.